Well, hey, it is John from Watson Baptist Church, and it is day number who even knows anymore during this social distancing time. In fact, I don't even know what day of the week it is right now, but I do know what time it is. It is time for
Fun with crafts and helium. And today I'm gonna try and make
a lawn chair Larry. So check this out. Build here, and we used some hot glue and these popsicle sticks, and I think it's looking pretty good, but it's not very strong, and yet at the same time I feel like it's sturdier than any piece of IKEA furniture that I've ever owned. So let's get finished with this. Also, just for the record, I don't like glue guns because, as I said before, I'm pretty messy and I make a mess with glue guns and they're hot. Also, they make these little stringy things look like spider webs, and they get all over the place, all over my hand, and I can feel them around me. And I know that they aren't really spider webs, but I hate spiders so much, I still cringe and think there must be a spider somewhere nearby. So don't like using glue guns, but we had to. Chair is done, and I think it looks pretty good, and my little action figure is enjoying lounging here in his lawn chair. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, John, how do you know how many balloons to use and how much helium to use? And there is this math formula, PV equals nRT, and I could calculate, but I'd need to know the weight of my lawn chair and my brave little action figure here, and the volume of the helium needs to be high enough and stuff. But here's the thing, I'm not an engineer. My dad and my brother are the engineers. I'm just the preacher, so I'm gonna eyeball it and figure this out as I go. Okay, so I was originally gonna use a bunch of punching balloons, but I don't think I got enough of these, so I had plan B. I got this bunch of balloons in a bag, and they're black, gold, and white, like New Orleans Saints colors, of course, so it's perfect for what I'm gonna do. Well, it took a while, and it's not exactly to scale, but here we go. My very own personal lawn chair Larry. And now you're wondering this whole time, what's a lawn chair Larry? Well, it comes from an actual name, a guy named Larry Walters. And before the movie Up ever came out, Larry Walters happened. It was a real thing. Larry Walters originally was just a 33-year-old truck driver, and he spent most of his time in his backyard eating peanut butter sandwiches, sitting in his lawn chair watching life pass him by. He admitted it was a pretty dull life. And then on July 2nd, 1982, Larry decided to do something different. He went out and he purchased 45 8-foot-tall weather balloons from the Navy surplus store and a lot of helium. And then he secured the balloons to his trusty lawn chair, and he climbed in his chair with some peanut butter sandwiches and a pellet gun. And his plan was to take off up the ground and float about 30 feet gently off the ground slowly, and then shoot down a few balloons, cruise around his neighborhood, and then come back down. Only he didn't gently float up, and he didn't stop at 30 feet. Larry shot up into the sky like a cannon, and he climbed and climbed and climbed all the way up to 11,000 feet. And he sailed way past his neighborhood, all the way into LA, past LAX, and then out into the ocean. Fortunately, people saw him, and finally a rescue helicopter managed to fly above him and drop a rescue line. And as soon as Larry was hauled back down to earth, he was arrested and led away in handcuffs. And while he was being escorted into a police car, a reporter asked Larry and said to him, "Hey, Larry, why did you do it?" And Larry stopped and he turned around and he said to the man, "Well, a man can't just sit there." Now, don't be like Larry Walters. Don't ever do what he did and violate airspace and get fined and almost die. But again, at least he didn't just sit there. I asked myself that question, how many professing Christians out there are living their lives, living their spiritual lives like Larry Walters did in his backyard? Just in this passive state, wasting time, watching it go by. How many of us are just sort of sitting there? And we may sit on our pews on Sunday mornings, we may sit down and we read our Bibles, but we don't actually do much of anything. And yet, the Bible tells us again and again and again, we are called to live out our faith. We have a king, and our king didn't say, "Hey, if you love me, you will read my commandments and sit there," or "You will memorize my commandments and just sit there around there." And he said, "If you love me, you will obey my commandments." That involves action. In James 1:22, James writes and says, "Don't just listen to God's word, you must do. You must act on what it says. Otherwise, you are fooling yourselves." And of course, one of the primary things that we are commanded by Jesus to do is in Matthew 28:19. He tells us, the church, we are to go and make disciples of all nations. So if we are going to actively serve Jesus and live for Jesus and share his message of what he has done through the cross for us, like Larry said, we can't just sit around. Hey, thanks so much for watching.